Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is J.R.R. and this video is long overdue. May is almost over and I am doing my April reading wrap up. It took me a while to get here. This year is the most hectic year I've had in a while, but I'm still trying to keep up to date with my channel. I don't want to abandon it because I've definitely done that before. And so far me doing like my reading wrap ups is how I feel like I can keep updated with it. Longer videos like video essays I definitely want to do more of. I just need the time, you know. I'm almost done with school. My summer semester should be short. Once I'm done with this semester, I'll have more time to like actually focus on personal enjoyment things like my channel and writing. So yeah. Anyway, with that out the way, I'm going to talk about the books that I read in April. I've talked about how I was taking a Jane Austen class. That class is over now. I now have a new depending on what kind of class I'm taking and how entertaining it is, it will consume all of my thoughts, my being. So my Jane Austen class I was watching Jane Austen adaptations, I was reading the books obviously for class, I was thinking about the Regency era a lot. Now I'm taking a class, Anthropology of the Undead. First module has been about like mummies and like just dead bodies in general, like had the process of decay and everything. So that has sort of become like my weird little special interest. And I bought a book. Well, it is a book that I need for class. I didn't really have to buy it though, but I bought it because I've read a few of the excerpts in my class and it's very interesting. I think it's a good book. I haven't finished it, but from what I've read, I really like it. So I bought it. It's a book about cadavers. Yeah, that is currently my special interest, and I have discovered that I have a weird fondness of bog bodies. Anyway, because I was taking a Jane Austen class, it was so entertaining to me and so much fun. I really enjoyed that class. Jane Austen was taking over my life and I was reading her books, and I'd always wanted to read her books, but I had not ventured into doing that. I felt like a little intimidated, but as far as classics go, I've said this before, but I do think that Jane Austen's books are easier to read for the modern audience. Her characters are fairly relatable, even if some of them are very, very rich and have wealth that I could never dream of having. She just has like a way of really understanding people, or she had a way of understanding people. And I think that really shines in Persuasion, which is the first book. I don't know if I started it in March or what, but I finished it in April. Persuasion, it is Jane Austen's last completed novel. She has other novels that were never, she died in like her 40s. Persuasion is Jane Austen's last finished novel. Her ability to observe people and depict like actual human relationships and just real people, it really shines in this book. In my last video that I talked about Jane Austen, it was a Jane Austen biography, and I didn't mention this in the video, but in that book, Jane Austen was a spinster as well as her sister Cassandra, and they lived with their parents. And so when their parents moved from, I forget where, but when they moved from wherever they originally lived, they moved to Bath, and Jane Austen didn't really like Bath, as far as I'm aware. A few of her books do take place in Bath, and so Bath comes up quite a bit in Persuasion as well, in generally an unfavorable light. Persuasion might also be Jane Austen's most personal novel. Like I said, she was a spinster, she never married, and the main character in Persuasion, she is 27, which is like, you know, the death knell. Remember, if you've read Pride and Prejudice, Charlotte marries Mr. Collins because she's 27, has no prospects for marriage, and she's like, I need to get married because marriage in the Regency era was extremely important. They needed to be married women, or else their three options were, if they were of a certain class, they could become a governess. Generally, they would become prostitutes, or I forget the other option, but yeah. They had to marry, become prostitutes, or something else, I can't remember. And then also like they could be a governess. Obviously, because women couldn't have careers, they couldn't own things, so they needed to marry a man who had the ability to provide for them. And in Persuasion, she had an opportunity to marry, but there was a man in the Navy, I think, is it Frederick Wentworth? This all happens prior to the book, but they had fallen in love. Anne and Wentworth, they fell in love. Wentworth proposed and was persuaded by Lady Russell, who is their neighbor and also a close friend of Anne's mother who has passed away. And she persuades Anne to break up with Wentworth. And so Wentworth goes off to sea and they're separated for I don't even know how long. Lady Russell convinced Anne to break up with Wentworth because she was worried about a number of things. There was a fear that he'd become like a drunk or something, and that he just would not be able to provide for Anne. So Anne does break up with Wentworth. They're split for several years, and then the book picks up. Not exactly. It takes like a few chapters for Wentworth to appear, but Wentworth is coming back to like the area. He's wealthy. He's a captain now. I don't know anything about the military, the Navy, especially not the British Navy. Not really. I just know like some random stuff because I'm like a history nerd. And I've seen Master and Commander, the movie. I know like basic stuff. I don't know if it works this way anymore. Probably not. If a British ship captured like a Spanish ship, they could take what was on it and apply that to their salary, their wealth, whatever. Wentworth is essentially like a self-made man, which is really significant to the novel. You have several characters who are not of the gentry or the aristocracy, and the characters who are of the aristocracy are kind of shallow and superficial. So that's an important theme of the book. And I had thought that Mr. Knightley was my favorite male lead from one of her novels. I love Wentworth, and it's not even, I don't know if he's like my favorite, but his love confession is my favorite. That is how you do a romance. I don't want to like say, I can't say it, like you have to read it for yourself, but it's so good. Okay, so the next book that I'm going to talk about is, I have this thing where I always want to tuck my hair behind my ear, but I need to stop. Okay, so the next book that I'm going to talk about is From Blood and Ash. I listened to it on Audible. I listened to it while I was working at my previous job that made doing that very easy. I just put my earbuds in and just go to work and, you know, get through a book. I listened to quite a few books while working there, like 4 books or so, because I only just recently realized that, hey, I can listen to books while I do this and it'll make it less boring for me. But so From Blood and Ash is, I only laughed because that's like a book that some people really either hate or love. I was meh on it. I just thought it was okay. I've seen videos of people talking about it and they absolutely hate it, and maybe it's different. I think it is, I count audiobooks as reading in a general sense of the word. Obviously it's not reading with your eyes, but you're taking in the information. It's a valid way of consuming a book, but there is sort of, sometimes with actual physical books and reading the words, you can see the typos and things like that. Audiobook narrators are sometimes super excellent. Sometimes, I mean, I have yet to have a narrator who I think is terrible. I even listened to Fourth Wing on Audible that people don't like that audiobook and how it was read. I thought it was fine. The way that these readers and these narrators, like, just, I don't know, they bring a lot of life to the books. They might make things seem less, I don't know, cringy or whatever. But then again, yeah, like you can't see like the words, so you can't see the typos. There's books that have plenty of typos and things like that. I don't know. I've seen people, they really don't like this book. I listened to it. I thought it was fine. It was mildly entertaining. There are moments of where like, sometimes it just feels like nothing's happening. Wait, let me actually talk about the synopsis of this book. A maiden, ... See, that's another thing that you can't see when you're doing an audiobook, because sometimes authors abuse the ... and the hyphenations, like the dash, the M dash. The M dash, some authors abuse that. So that's one thing that you can't see. It was probably used a lot in this book. I wouldn't know because I haven't seen the words. But this is a synopsis. A maiden, ... chosen from birth to usher in a new era. Poppy's life has never been her own. The life of the maiden is solitary, never to be touched, never to be looked upon, never to be spoken to, and never to experience pleasure. Waiting for the day of her ascension, she would rather be with the guards, fighting back the evil that took her family, than preparing to be found worthy by the gods. But the choice has never been hers, a duty, ... The entire kingdom's future rests on Poppy's shoulders, something she's not even quite sure she wants for herself, because a maiden has a heart and a soul and longing, and when Hawk, a golden-eyed guard, honor bound to ensure her ascension, enters her life, Destiny and duty become tangled with desire and need. He incites her anger, makes her question everything she believes in, and tempts her with the forbidden. A kingdom ... forsaken by the gods and feared by mortals, a fallen kingdom is rising once more. And as the line between what is forbidden and what is right becomes blurred, Poppy is not only on the verge of losing her heart and being found unworthy by the gods, but also her life, when every blood-soaked thread that holds her world together begins to unravel. So that was a lot. There are vampires in this, but I don't think they're called vampires, right? Yeah, they're called Atlanteans, which every time that comes up, I think about underwater, water. So I don't know. I just think that another name could have maybe be chosen, possibly, because that's like my, connotation. That's what I think of, but whatever, it's fine. I don't plan on reading the next couple books. I hear that a lot of people, like even fans of this series, don't love them, and I wasn't so hooked by this book that I would seek out the other ones. One thing, I like that Poppy is not rail thin. She's described as being, pretty curvy, which is different from books like these, because there's a few books where the girl's just like super tiny. I do think she's short though. Is she short? I'm not sure. I might be confusing it with another book that I will be talking about for my May reading wrap up. There's like a scene where like this family has to sacrifice their child to like these gods, and I was like, ooh, they're gonna really do it, and they really did it, and I was like, that's interesting. Yeah, so most of the book, honestly, so little really feels like is happening. The last 3 hours of the book though, I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil it, but something happens. There's like a twist essentially, and it was fun, it was interesting, but the last 3 hours of the book, like, there's a lot happening, and I was like, this is really interesting. But for a book that's like an audio that's 20 hours long, 3 hours of entertainment towards the end. One of the things is that, and I've seen this complaint come up a lot, but one of the things is that Poppy repeats herself a lot in she monologues. It is first person, it's through her point of view. So she monologues a lot about just like her position as the maiden and how she has a choice and stuff like this. But also she will she will give information that we already know, or something she already said like half a page ago, and then she'll say it in her monologues. That is something I try to pay attention to when I'm writing, and I've noticed that in my writing, where I'll say something and then in like the next paragraph I repeat it, or like the next sentence, and so I've tried to get better about cutting that out. You want to get rid of stuff that's repeating information because it's just redundant. But yeah, I think I'm getting through a lot of the books that have been popular, and I'm finding that a lot of them I don't love. I like having my curiosity settled. I'm also learning, unless somebody can recommend me like a really good fantasy romance book, I'm learning that maybe it's not my thing. I like fantasy, I like romance. I don't know if I necessarily like them together, but I think it's because certain conventions have been set up for fantasy romance that just don't work for me. And it's not even just like tropes, it's like the writing style. There's a specific writing style. But this book was not terrible. I don't think it was terrible. There's some people that say it's terrible. Maybe it's different when you read it with your eyes. I don't think it was that bad. I just, it was fine. And that's kind of how I feel about a book that I read this month that I will be talking about in a later video. So the next book I want to talk about is Northanger Abbey by Jane Austen. This one is sort of a parody, satire on Gothic fiction. The main character in the book, she is a book talk girly of the Regency era. The Regency era's version of a book talk girl, and she loves Gothic fiction. Gothic fiction started, I have to have a whole video talking about Gothic fiction that I kind of want to redo. I like the video and the information I give, but I feel like I could have done it a little better. So I don't know. But so Gothic fiction, like the idea of Gothic literature, it started with the Castle of Otranto, and there were several there's things from that lent to the Gothic later on, like the creepy castle and stuff like that. At the time, a lot of the things that appeared in Gothic fiction were like scandalous and wild and even viewed as very scary to people back then, but now it's, you know, it's not that big of a deal. But for the time, there were a lot of things that were very like, about it, that were like, clutch your pearls. Catherine Morland, she's a really big fan of Gothic fiction. Gothic fiction influences how Catherine moves about the world and how she interacts with people. There's a huge misunderstanding that happens in the book that comes from her like fancies, essentially. She is too wrapped up in her little world and her little books, which I can relate. Not too much though. I mean, she really, her big misunderstanding really does come from, I mean, she has some sort of clues that can kind of lead her to that, sort of, but she really got up into her imagination and let her imagination run wild. Catherine's a very fun protagonist. She's kind of a silly protagonist. She's also not very bright, and this comes from directly from the narration. It basically says that she's not a smart cookie. She's not a smart girl. It's kind of refreshing because, you know, other Jane Austen protagonists, they're very witty and like kind of cunning, some of them. Catherine's not. Jane Austen was kind of playing with her style. If you read her books, especially back to back, you'll realize that she has a style, obviously, most authors do. But this book is so fun because the narrator is basically talking to you as a reader and will just say things like, my protagonist, like literally, my protagonist does this and that. It's just a lot of fun. This was a fun time. I liked this book. Okay, the next book I'm going to talk about is the only one I have, but it needs to go back to the library soon. It's called Belle of the Ball, and I was in the library looking for a book for somebody who asked me to get them a book, and I was sort of looking for myself, but not really. I didn't really know what I wanted to get, and I was looking at the manga section, manga/graphic novels. I didn't know it was like graphic novels also. I thought it was just like the manga section, and I started looking towards the end and they had like graphic novels, and I saw this and I liked the way it looked, and so I picked it up. I looked on the inside and it literally says this, and I was sold immediately to all the gays who are obsessed with High School Musical in middle school. It made me laugh and giggle, and I was like, well, this is probably going to be a good time. And yeah, this is a sapphic graphic novel, and sort of like the lesbian version for Heartstopper, which I have not read yet, but it's in that same vein that it takes place in high school. There's not an issue with like coming out or anything. People are accepting of the relationships and romances in this, but let me read the synopsis for you. A young adult graphic novel about high school wallflower Belle Hawkins, who ends up in a love triangle after tutoring the girlfriend of her crush. High school senior and notorious wallflower Hawkins finally works up the courage to remove her mascot mask and ask out her longtime crush, Regina Moreno, head cheerleader, academic overachiever, and all-around popular girl. There's only one teensy little problem. Regina is already dating Chloe Kitagawa, athletic all-star and middling English student. Regina sees a perfectly self-serving opportunity here and asks the smitten Hawkins to tutor Chloe free of charge, knowing Hawkins will do anything to get closer to her. And while Regina's plan works at first, she doesn't realize that Hawkins and Chloe knew each other as kids when Hawkins went by Belle and wore princess dresses to school every single day. Before long, romance does start to blossom, but not between who you might expect. With Belle of the Ball, cartoonist Mariana Costa has reinvigorated satisfying, reliable tropes into your new favorite teen romantic comedy. So yeah, it was just a lot of fun. There's nothing overly serious that happens in this. It's very innocent and sweet, and I read it really quickly. I was reading a book that was incredibly difficult for me. It didn't put me in a reading slump, but I thought it was going to, because I was having such a hard time getting through this specific book that I will talk about later in another video. It was exactly what I needed in a time when I was suffering. The final thing I want to talk about, and this will take me no time at all, I'm going to be ending this kind of soon. I do want to talk about the TV shows and stuff that I've been watching, but I think I will do that in a separate video because it's a lot. It's a lot, I've been trying to add it on. Like, I've been trying not to do one single video because I don't know how it fits on my channel, because I do like to talk about books mostly, but it's gonna have to be a separate video because it's literally, I've been watching, like, I have a list. Kaiju number 8, The Daily Lives of High School Boys, Fruits Basket, Bridgerton, Demon Slayer. Like, it's not that much actually, but it would take me too long, I feel like, and I want to be done because my voice, and I've just had a long day. So, but the last thing I want to talk about is The Return of the King. I have talked about Tolkien quite a bit and how much I love his world, how much his world has influenced me. I'm obsessed with The Lord of the Rings. It is one of my favorite things ever. It has inspired me as a writer and as a creative. Like, I don't try to rip from Tolkien, but when I'm writing and just what I've learned from like the Silmarillion and how much an author can flesh out their work, it's just been really inspirational. So I don't have a lot of things like criticisms. Like, I'm completely biased. I'm not unbiased when it comes to talking about Tolkien, but I listened to The Return of the King on Audible. This was read by Andy Serkis, and the other 2 audiobooks that I had read were by a different narrator that I've talked about, and I've praised his reading in my other videos if you want to go watch those. But this one was read by Andy Serkis, and I really like how he read it. Both narrators did a great job. I don't have a favorite. They're just different vibes, different flavors. But this one, Andy Serkis is just really good at doing voices. He has like a different voice for every character. I think I had seen somewhere that prior to doing Gollum, he hadn't done voice work before, and I'm like, where were you this whole entire time? Like, he's really good at the voice work, and just like giving life to all these variety of characters. There are so many characters in this whole entire world. Gimli was prepared to throw down, because they had the nerve to say that Galadriel wasn't like the most beautiful woman that they've ever seen. And also the last line is Sam. I love how the book ends with Sam, and he's literally just like, well, I'm back, and that's the last line. He's with his family, and yeah, after they say goodbye to Frodo at the Grey Havens, he goes back to his home, to his family, Sam, and he's like, well, I'm back. And it's so simple and so just powerful, and I don't know, this story has really, the overall story, not just Frodo and like the Fellowship's journey, but like the whole world's story has been so, like, it's affected me quite a lot. When I first started learning about the Silmarillion and like the stories and that, because so much of what happens in the Silmarillion, it's like they're tragedies, it made me existential. Like, it really was affecting how I was thinking and feeling for a while, and not in a bad way. It just made me think a lot. So yeah, it's really a phenomenal, like, really amazing. I brought out my mic because there was just so much noise happening in the background, and I thought that holding it closer to my mouth would work. But it wasn't even working properly, which is actually, it's a good thing that I decided to plug in my other microphone, because I didn't have faith in the microphone that you see me holding in the video. I had zero faith at all. So I plugged in my snowball mic, my handy dandy trusty snowball mic, which tends to typically work for me, except in the Jane Austen video. But at this point, there's always an issue with like audio, I feel like. But I'm trying my best. I don't have fancy equipment. I'm using stuff that I've had for a few years now and just doing my best because things are so expensive. I mean, I'm hoping that I can afford some nicer things soon. I'm working full-time now. It's my first full-time job. I'm terrified. I really am. But in that last clip, I basically was just saying thank you for watching. Really, truly, anybody who watches my videos, I really appreciate it. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe, of course. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.